Hey y'all, it's Heel Heat time.
Hi everybody and welcome to Heel Heat. My name is George Coles and this is a Heel Heat Top 10. Now the top 10 this week is suggestions for the WWE Network. Basically it's suggestions of stuff if you have the WWE Network you should be watching on the WWE Network. From my point of view. First up, let's get right into it. Number 10, NXT. Just the show itself in general. If you have the WWE Network and you're not watching NXT, you're kind of cheating yourself out. Everybody knows it's the breeding ground for what WWE is doing. It's where the future stars go to learn how to become WWE style wrestlers. I personally think week to week NXT is a better show than anything they put on Raw, on SmackDown, on Main Event, on Superstars. I think NXT is better than what they do there. It's more of an old school wrestling feel. Less promos, more wrestling. NXT TakeOver, NXT Arrival, their two specials that they had are both been very great or awesome shows. To me, it's, for more than one reason, it's very enjoyable. It's got an old school feel. It's the future of the business. And it's just fun. Just if you like professional wrestling, the sport, it's a fun show to watch. Next up is our number 9. WCW Bash at the Beach 1996. Now, if you don't know why you should go back and watch this event, you've been under a rock for the last 20 years. This is basically the event that started the NWO and spoiler alert, I guess, if you don't know, this is, the Outsiders were there, Scott Hall and Kevin Nash. They were going to wrestle a team of Sting, Lex Luger, Randy Savage with a mystery partner. Well, the mystery partner turns out to be Hulk Hogan. Thus begins the NWO. Thus begins the boom period for WCW, where they totally dominated the ratings. This is the beginning. This is the Hulk Hogan heel turn. Historically significant for a number of reasons. Number 8, again another historically significant show, ECW Hardcore Television number 72. I won't give a spoiler alert on this one because there's probably a lot of you that haven't seen it, honestly. All I could say is go and watch this show if you've never seen it, even if you have before, and by the end of the show, you'll understand why this is so historically significant and why it would make a list like this of suggestions for stuff to watch. Now, our number 7 is probably the most hyped event in the history of professional wrestling, and for good reason. WWF WrestleMania 3. Got Hogan versus Andre the Giant, the biggest match in the history of wrestling. However, also on the undercard we got Steamboat versus Savage, the greatest wrestling match in the history of wrestling, arguably. Just a great card from top to bottom. I watched it recently. It holds up pretty decent. Most of the matches are quick 5 to 7 minute matches, so it keeps you interested, keeps you going forward. Lots of legends on the show. I mean, you got the Hart Foundation are on there, the British Bulldogs, Roddy Piper, Adrian Adonis, the main event, everywhere, up and down the card, it's nothing but legends. Great show to watch, a great reminder of this is what brought us to where we are now. This was the event that put WWE fully in control and made them the company to watch. Now, our number 6 is Starrcade 83 by the NWA. NWA Starrcade 83. The first of the Starrcade events, it chronicles Ric Flair and his pursuit of his 3rd World Championship against Handsome Harley Race, the standard bearer for the NWA up until this point. overall, a fantastic match. This title run is a run that really put Rick on the map as being the man. The 2 title runs before, they kind of were hesitant about really running with him. This one, they fully said, we're going to go with him. He's going to be the guy. You see the guy in his prime, and Harley Race as close to his prime. You see 2 of arguably the top 5 best in-ring performers in the history of wrestling, in or close to their prime, doing what they do best. Now on the undercard, you got several good matches too. You got the dog collar match with Piper and Valentine. You got the Briscoe brothers versus Steamboat and Youngblood. Just a great show altogether. Great old wrestling show. Still holds up well. Much like I said with WrestleMania, I watched it again recently. Very good show. Very historically relevant. It's the first Starrcade, the first really big NWA event. But it's a great show. Great way to see the start of Ric Flair becoming the best wrestler in the history of wrestling. Next up's our number 5. ECW Barely Legal. The first ECW pay-per-view, and in my opinion, the best ECW pay-per-view. Everything was solid from top to bottom. We had the Dudleys versus the Eliminators, Lance Storm versus Rob Van Dam, Taz versus Sabu, 3-way dance with Terry Funk, the Sandman, and Stevie Richards. Funk wins, goes on to face Raven for the world title. Just a great card, a great reflection of what ECW was when it was at its best. You know, everybody thinks that ECW is a blood and guts company. Go back and watch this. You'll see it's more than that. This is ECW at the period of time where they still had enough of their original guys that they were putting on the great shows that they always did. And this is why people like myself and other ECW fanatics loved the company so much, because of shows like this. Next up, our number 4, is Monday Night Raw episode number 17. Now, if you're not familiar with episode number 17, spoiler alert, this is the episode where the Kid beats Razor Ramon. Why does this make the list? Other than that, there's a fantastic match. I think Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty for the Intercontinental title. I could be wrong on that, but I believe it's on this show as well. I've watched a bunch of Raws in a row, so they kind of bleed in a little bit. But definitely this is the one where the Kid and Razor wrestle each other. Now, why this is significant and why this is making this list, this is the first time we really see that adage that Vince McMahon likes to drill in our head, that anything can happen on Monday Night Raw, anything can happen in the WWE. This is what made the live show so exciting. This is what made Raw so exciting. Seeing things like this that weren't supposed to happen. A guy that you've seen over the months before basically jobbing out to half the roster gets a surprise win over one of the main talents on the show, thus escalating the 1-2-3 Kid into being one of the great wrestlers of the next decade, as X-Pac, as Six, 1-2-3 Kid. Everything did. This shot him into the stratosphere. This made Raw must-watch TV, because you couldn't skip a Monday Night Raw because you didn't know if something like this was going to happen again. Next up's our number 3. This is a documentary that was put out the week after The Ultimate Warrior died. It was called Warrior, the Ultimate Legend. It had some interviews with him, some of the people that knew him the best in wrestling, some of the people that were around at the time with him. I don't know how much of this is recycled from his DVD. I haven't watched his DVD as of yet. However, I thought this was a really well done documentary, especially how quick they put it out. A lot of the backstage stuff they showed from WrestleMania 30 was great. The interaction with him and Vince McMahon, the interaction with him and Hogan, him giving Vince McMahon the book The Little Engine That Could, I thought that was very touching. Vince McMahon crying on there noticeably when talking about the Ultimate Warrior. I thought the whole thing was very well done and a very good tribute to one of the big stars of the 1980s. Now, whether you're an Ultimate Warrior fan or you're not, this is definitely worth watching, even if you're not, because this is what WWE can do when they're at their best. When they do these documentaries, much like the Mick Foley one they did for his DVD, much like the CM Punk one they did for his DVD, when they're on the top of their game, they put out quality video, quality shows that you can watch just like this. Like I said, you don't have to be the biggest Ultimate Warrior fan. I'm not his hugest fan. I appreciate what the guy did for the business. However, just wasn't my guy. However, this is extremely entertaining, worth the 1 hour that you're going to put into it. Now, our number 2 is WCW Clash of the Champions 6. This is on here for the reason that we have probably the best feud of all time, Ric Flair versus Ricky the Dragon Steamboat. And I think this is their best match. Flair versus Steamboat in a 2 out of 3 falls match that goes almost an hour on the show. Just a great match. One of the reasons that this is the greatest feud of all time, or considered by a lot to be one of the greatest feuds or greatest matchups in the history of wrestling. You can definitely see it here. You see two masters of the ring doing what they do best. And it's definitely worth it. The undercard's pretty good too, but this is definitely one that you want to see just for this match. Now, before we get into our number 1, if you've seen our show before, you know we do a best of the rest. Basically, the stuff that just barely missed the list. First off, WWE Money in the Bank 2011. If I have to explain to you guys why, you all remember it. This was the CM Punk finally getting his due, winning the WWE World title from John Cena, and then walking out of the building with the belt. Yes, afterwards it was a little bit, they didn't do exactly what they should have after that. However, the excitement of the crowd that night, the match itself, one of John Cena's absolute best, one of CM Punk's absolute bests, just the whole feeling, the whole vibe that night makes this a special show, makes this something that you should be watching if you haven't already. Next up, WCW Starrcade 1989. Now, I think I might be one of the few people that consider this one of the better Starrcades. It was named Future Shock, and basically what it was 2 round-robin tournaments. You had a singles round-robin tournament with Ric Flair, Sting, The Great Muta, and Lex Luger. Then you had a tag team round-robin tournament. The Samoan SWAT team, the Road Warriors, the Steiners, and Doom. I mean, just think about that. The different matchups that they had. Everybody had to face each other. I thoroughly enjoyed it. I thought it was one of the coolest concepts they ever did. I liked it. I just watched it again recently, like I did with most of these before I did this list. I thought it was an awesome show. It's one of my personal favorite pay-per-views of all time. Any company involved. Next up, we have Clash of the Champions, or WCW Clash of the Champions 9, which is highlighted by Ric Flair versus Terry Funk in an I Quit match. Again, this was right around the same time period of Clash 6, Starrcade 89, Clash 9. WCW and what was the remnants of the NWA Crockett territory at that time was on fire, and they had some of the great matches in the history of the business. This one's kind of overlooked because Flair went from a feud with Steamboat to a feud with Funk. The feud with Funk isn't looked at back at as fondly as the Flair Steamboat rivalry, but I think they put just as good, if not better, matches on at times. And this was one of the best matches of either Terry Funk. I think it's one of the best matches of Terry Funk's career, one of the absolute legends of wrestling. Great show, great undercard on it, just a fun show to watch. And last but not least, for the best of the rest, Legends House. Now, it's about 6 or 7 episodes in at the time of this recording, and yes, it's scripted, and yes, it's kind of cheesy at times, but so what? It's still fun, and it's still funny, and it's still good to see some of your heroes on the show, some of the guys that you grew up watching and loved. Now, before we get into our number 1, if you think we put something up too high, something down too low, something we left off the list altogether, let us know what you think. Hit us up on Facebook, hit us up on Twitter, put it down where? Down in the comments. We love your feedback here. It helps us to get better. But anyway, now on to our number 1. WrestleMania 17. I think personally the greatest WrestleMania they've had yet. It had the main event of The Rock versus Steve Austin, one of their 3 WrestleMania main events. I think this is the best of the 3. You had undercard, had the TLC match, Angle versus Benoit, Triple H versus The Undertaker for the first of their 3 WrestleMania matches. I just think it was solid from top to bottom. You had the gimmick battle royal, you had the hardcore match with the Big Show, Kane, and Raven. Everything about this show, to me, was the best WrestleMania that they've produced as of yet. Hasn't been topped, in my opinion. And I think it's going to be a very long time before we see something that does top it. Basically, that's all I have to say about this. This has been a Heel Heat Top 10. Top 10 things you should watch on the network.